Hello and welcome to Down to Earth Convos Down Under, episode 12. In this episode, Ali and I talk about empowerment versus entitlement, raising financially independent kids, and practical ways to make that happen in your family by helping your kids participate and contribute to the family home.
Hey Ali.
Hey Brad, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm great. Really looking forward to getting into this.
Awesome to hear it. Yeah, so I was thinking, well, millennials, they get into a bit of a bad rap, especially these days with, the entitlement and these mentalities that are often attributed to them. And, on one hand, that is quite fair. On the other hand, there are plenty of millennials that are not entitled. But my question that I wanted to start today's podcast with was, how do parents empower their kids? What can parents do to actually help their kids grow in self-confidence, grow in self-worth and self-belief?
Oh, that's a great question. And it's just one of my favorite topics because when I look into my own life and how I was raised, because I believe that we are a reflection of our parents, our upbringing, our environment. And I look at the way my mum brought me up, which was to be financially independent. And I think that's just hugely important. And that was important to me. I believe that we filter our world in according to what's important to us. And my mum was financial security and financial independence was important to my mum. So she instilled those principles, that belief into us as well. So therefore, I wanted to pass and hand down that onto my kids. And I'm a big fan. I believe that you, the parent, for the parents that are listening, are your kids' favorite teacher. And this is an opportunity to pass on your values when you're raising the kids. Now, empowerment I see it as a choice. Like we can either empower our kids and raise financially independent kids, which is, as we'll touch on, it is hugely important because these kids grow up, they turn into teenagers and young adults, and their needs and their wants get more expensive. And I just knew I had this epiphany. I remember I was standing in my kitchen and my kids were asking for stuff. And back then in the day, it was like, what are those things called? What do you call them? iPods. And then it turned into iPhones and iPads, this expensive technology and computers and things. And I was just thinking, wow, I just want to get my kids off my payroll. You know what I mean? It's like, because I think there's a stage where you raise your kids and you provide for them for all their needs and you give them the best that you can afford. Education, food, clothing, a roof over your head, all those things, right? I'm just not denying that for a moment. But when it becomes a want, which things that they want to have that they don't necessarily need, so like clothing, even financing their social activities for going to the pictures, hanging out with friends, traveling, whether it's their young kids going to water parks or theme parks, all those sort of things, I saw them was, I don't really necessarily feel as a parent I need to provide that for them. And we were just always busy raising, running a business, growing a business. And quite frankly, when I reflect back to all those years ago, I was cash poor. I'm not that today. And what I'm proud to say, Brad, is that my 3 kids are financially independent. I don't finance them. And it's so important that, look, I might admit that I've got 2 out of my 3 kids currently living at home still. They're quite young, one's still a teenager and one's in their early 20s, but they pay their way. So I'm going to answer this question by empowering your kids to start early, start them paying their own way. And they can do that by contributing and participating to the family home. And this starts from an early age. And I believe the earlier the better. My kids, I got them contributing and participating in the family home from a very young age.
Okay, so the very first concrete step is starting from a young age. And what does that look like? What are they starting? What are they doing in the family home to contribute? Is that like chores?
Chores. Let's call it chores, or just being involved in what in life. Like the family home is a platform for life lessons. So just start with the kitchen. I've had my toddlers making homemade pizzas. They love it. They make a huge mess. I love to share this because when I talk to my clients and people that I know, I say, I ask parents, what would be the one thing that you would do differently if you had the chance to raise your kids again, which we don't. That's called grandchildren. And they often say, I just wish I had got my kids to do more when they were young, because as they get teenagers, it's like that old dog, new tricks. I love that metaphor. It's like children are just a sponge and they're so open to learning new things. So don't rob them of the opportunities. Who cares about the messy house? Teach them to clean up. So just making pizzas, homemade pizzas, getting them involved, helping them hang the clothes out, putting the clothes in the wash. It just starts from everyday life. And then because really we're raising our kids to be independent. We want them to leave the home and fend for themselves and start and what we don't want to be robbing them of the right to do the things that we might take for granted. We need them self-sufficient. We need them emotionally intelligent and financially independent. That was what I really valued, and that's what I'm doing. And I just love it that my kids are doing that now and that they are helping their friends become more independent as well.
Yeah, I think being entitled and being dependent kind of go hand in hand together. So if you can work on one, you're kind of working on both at the same time as well. So breaking the cycle of entitlement, or the trend of entitlement at the moment, kind of comes back to helping people to become more independent and more capable to do things on their own. You've got a few more, I think, to share on how to help kids and teens grow in self-confidence, self-worth, and self-belief.
Yeah, okay. So let's just carry on using that as an example. If we are getting our kids to contribute and participate in the family home, I'm a big fan of feeding them what they like and enjoy. Because if they're doing things that they enjoy, they're going to become good at it. And when they become good at something, what's the end result? They grow in confidence. So my 3 kids, I've talked about this before. I feel like I've raised 3 chefs. I've married an unqualified chef, and I've raised 3 unqualified chefs because cooking's not my thing. It's incredible that they fill your voids. And I love that sometimes my kids, they cook these beautiful meals and they say to me, like particularly my middle son, he goes, Mum, when is it your turn to cook? And I said, I can't even believe you asking me that. Like, why do I need to cook when you're such good cooks? Because cooking is not my forte. I will do it, but I prefer raw food probably. So where they grow in self-belief and confidence is when they get competent. It's raising competent kids in all areas of their life. They should be able to know how to fend for themselves. And when you're a business person, for those parents who have a business, when I reflect back to my 30 years of being a co-founder of ePlants with my husband, I was there for the kids to go to school, and my husband was there when they came home. And as they got older, they started to look after themselves with afternoon tea. They'd prepare their family meal. My kids today, as teenagers and young 20-year-olds in their early 20s, they will shop, they will budget, they will prepare a meal. They'll prepare a meal not only for the family, but for if we have guests. And they can prepare food and that for a huge amount of people. And so they would do things from like preparing the house for the visitors, and they choose the things that they're good at. So, and then, I haven't added this one, the kids have girlfriends. So my 2 sons have 2 girlfriends, and they are involved as well. So we encourage their girlfriends to cook one night a week if they're staying with us. This is really important. This would love to see more of this. Because of this housing affordability crisis in Australia, the kids aren't leaving home. So you want to ask the question, how long do you want your kids to be at home? I don't mind having them home. I know that they're saving money, but they certainly pay their way. They pay board. They have done from as soon as they left school. So the question, let's talk about that for a moment. If they're paying their own way, it's either, I think there's two great ways. Like some parents get their kids paying their way, paying for themselves a lot earlier because they really need it. Kids, our teenagers have valuable skills. Oh my goodness, they're so tech savvy. That's just one of them that I can come to think of. They can cook. I've just already discovered that. When they get their license, they can shop. They can drop siblings to and from different different events, netball and basketball and whatever they do, swimming. That's what I've done. When my daughter got her license, then she would take the younger one to drama or what have you. That just saves me precious time and energy. And that is building their confidence. They're feeling worthy. They're growing in self-image and self-esteem because they're needed, they're valued, they're appreciated. They're contributing, they're participating. This sounds just so easy, doesn't it? So
It does.
Yeah. So to me, it's like, just do that. Like, get the kids participating, contributing, and appreciate what it is that they're doing. And you do that verbally through communication by saying thank you, as simple as thank you. Like as Richard Branson says, people thrive on praise. So why not share that? Thank you. What a great job you've done. And be genuine and authentic.
Yeah, and on the topic of connecting and communicating, would you also say it's important to share stories, to connect in other ways as well? So there's acts of service, which is, the cooking and the preparing the home and handling all of life related to the home and everyone involved in it. What would you say kind of interpersonally? What would you recommend on that front?
That's great. I just want to add a few things just so to expand that participation and contribution with the family home, the cooking, the shopping, dropping the kids off, their siblings to and from work, painting their house, gardening. I have one of my kids that grow food. That's contribution. One of my sons cooks more than the other one, but I said, hey, they grows the food and brings the food to the table, the garden to the table type thing. So you get that during a family. Oh, he does nothing. Or why don't you ask him? I just love that. That's just fun, those conversations. So communicating stories is so invaluable and can never be underestimated. Sharing your stories, the parents sharing their stories about what they did as a child, or talking about the stories with their grandparents and how they were raised. I believe we learn through storytelling and connect to your children through sharing those stories and why we do things. Like, why am I teaching you this? One day you're going to move out of home. I'm not going to be cooking your dinner and washing your clothes. Oh, communication through stories and communication through values. So we talk about values. We all have values, and it's a hierarchy of values. So if you want to connect to your children, connect to them through their values. What's important to them? Are they going to be listening when you're talking about something that's important to them? Yes.
And how do you find out their values? You watch their behavior rather than their words. Their words can be an indicator, but you want to see what they're actually doing with their time, what they're focusing on, what's important to them through how they live their life, rather than maybe how they say or the things that they think they want. That's definitely the best way to go about that. And
values, we'll give people the tip to go into Dr. John Demartini's Determination of Values, where he asks, quality of life is based on the quality of questions you ask. So you can determine your own values and you can determine your children's values by asking those quality questions. You touched on a few of them, Brad.
Can't recommend it enough.
Exactly. Where do they spend their time? What do they talk about? What do they spend their money on? What do they read and study? Oh, just sneak in and see what they're Googling on YouTube. It's just so fascinating. The answers are right in front of you. We should care enough and love our children enough, which our parents do, to find out what's most important to them. So that connection is so easy when you connect through their values and appreciate them. Love and appreciate them for who they are, and they'll become who you love. That's another one of Dr. John Demartini's quotes.
Certainly. And to jump back to the stories, so what stories? Is it stories of success, stories of failure, interesting and funny stories, stories with a purpose? Would you kind of group them at all, or would you just say general stories from your life?
I would do all of them, whatever comes up in the moment. It's like we don't plan it. It's
for sure.
Yeah, of course. Like if something's happening in the kitchen where the kids are making a mess or something like that, and a story downloads to you, just share it. And you don't want to hold back. Parents don't hold back, and sharing those stories of challenge. That's a really great point, Brad. It's not just the success stories and the funny ones. It's sharing the challenges that you had. I shared the story, which I'll need to do a podcast on this one about the fear. Like the scariest one, and the scariest story that I've ever had happen to me was when I was attacked when I was 15 years old, walking home from, working in a milk bar, which I just couldn't get home that particular night. That was horrifying for me. So then that creates my destiny. So I was very protective of my children growing up. I didn't want them to walk in the dark. So it was very important for me to know where they were, who they were with, and how they were getting home. So that is just like the 3 golden rules of how I've raised my kids, just a few of them as well. So share the stories of challenge and heartache and that sort of thing. So it's so important to share little bits and pieces of it at the right age, when they're ready, when you feel the time's right. The parent knows this. The parents will.
Now, what about the financial side of things? How do we pass on good financial lessons? Because that's not only going to impact your teenager, but potentially their teenager and so on down the line, because good financial management is typically passed along, not always. You have that rule that wealth often disappears within 3 generations, but people that learn to manage money properly from a young age will almost always be more financially successful and able to live the life that they want, rather than people who have to struggle and stumble, and maybe sometimes they figure it out later on, maybe sometimes they don't.
Oh yeah, that I've never put those 2 words together, financially struggle and
Stumble.
Yes, I always do financial struggle. I like that going together. So I guess like I'm a financially savvy mum, and my mum was financially savvy. See how the cycle starts? And my dad was an entrepreneur, worked for himself. My mum was a teacher. So I had that nice contrast of both, working for yourself and working for others. So I like to share traits, entrepreneurial traits, because I believe that they're very worthy of sharing. And when you look at statistics, financially savvy people often have their own business, and entrepreneurs. I believe that we're coming into a time of an entrepreneur revolution where there'll be young entrepreneurs. They are appearing every day. There's going to be new problems that need solving in this world. There's going to be new businesses created. So let me see how I'm going to answer this one. So financial education, hugely important. Education was important to my mum, so therefore it's important to me. And I have financially educated my kids. I've done it in many ways by sharing stories. Like I would open my computer. I would show my kids my stock market profile. I tell them about what's red and what's green, what's a blue chip stock and what's not giving financial advice to any of our listeners. I talk about business on a daily basis, where my kids used to be annoyed because we'd be talking about the dramas that we had at work. Who didn't turn up? Who was sick? Who pulled a sickie? Who didn't pull their weight? My 7-year-old used to, when my son Sam was 7 or 8 years old, he'd come up to me in business and he would say to me, those 3 employees over there are talking to each other. And that's 10, 20, 30 minutes. And he would say to me, these are 2 real stories. My son Sam would say, hey, did that guy pay for the psych-ad in the back of the ute? I didn't see him go to the office. So the kids become a product of their environment, their upbringing, the conversations that you have. So this is financial education. It doesn't have to be reading books, although I recommend books. My kids aren't all readers. Then now I always put this out there that if you don't read, hey, how about going on Audible? There's some really cool books out there. Raise your financial education by listening to some books if you're not going to read them. Going to seminars. I love going to live seminars and workshops, whether they're property or just bullion, things like that. I've just attended conferences recently last year, a 4-day conference in Sydney with a wealth coach. So my son Sam and we have a connection with certain values. So for the parents that are listening, you'll have children. If you've got 3 children, their values will be different. They'll share some values. We share values, right? So what you want to do, getting back to that communication and connecting to them, you connect to their values. So right now I'm doing one-on-one, 1 to 2 mentoring with my middle son who's learning calls for difference. My middle son, I invited him. My younger son, I invited him. He said, oh no, that's not his thing. I only asked him once. You invite them in. to us. So with education, the reason why I brought that up is you want to involve them where they've got a connection. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So like my young son Bailey might grow food. I could be financially educating him, talking from a young child. Oh my golly, look how much money we're saving. Do you know the price of watermelons at the moment? You know, avocados, that sort of thing. So the message here is use life as a platform. Don't waste the precious moments you have with the child to send them a message, a financial lesson. And you could be sharing, if you're not financially savvy, like my mum and I am, my mum was and I am, you could be teaching, they could be learning from what you did, what they could do better. So the parents never ever think, oh my golly, what could I teach them? Because they will be learning from what you could be doing better.
Mm.
So financial education, of course, like you don't want to, like I remember my son, so I went to university to pursue my interest in business and finance. So I did a university degree in accounting and economics, right? My middle son, he said to me back in high school when it was time for him to look at the pathway of university, and he just thought that I wanted him to pursue a university degree. And it came up when I was in a conversation with the principal of the school. The principal, I'm so glad he was switched on. It was Brother Paul at the time. He said, he just looked straight at Sam and said, what do you want to do, Sam? And it was like, Sam didn't want to go to uni. That wasn't his pathway. He used to come home from school and he used to give me his report, and it was okay. There weren't highest distinctions there. I just used to say to Sam, how'd you go? Did you try your best? The subjects that Sam did well in were business. And it's no coincidence that what he's following now, because he has freedom of choice to study what he wants to study, it's no coincidence that he's reading financial books, studying calls for difference, has been to covered calls with me on seminars, property seminars, wealth conferences in Sydney with Kevin Green, that he's got a wealth coach. See, just let them be and just stand back and watch what they enjoy, and you feed it. Parents are dream enablers. So really watch and observe, like you said before, what do the kids want to do? What are they interested in? Where are they spending their time? And just keep feeding them that and educate them that way. And there'll be financial lessons weaved right throughout every day.
I think that's a really good point that you made about mistakes being perfectly valid lessons as well. Because if you do everything perfectly, there's not so much that can be learned from it. Whereas if you've made mistakes, talking about those, it's going to help a lot, because you've got the path that you went down, what you could have done differently. Makes it a lot easier to understand the lesson there. So the next one that I think you wanted to talk about was participation. And my question is, does participation is participation different from contribution, or do those two go hand in hand, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's almost like we need to have to get the dictionary, because I love those two words and they sort of correlate and interrelate, don't they? Contribution is contributing. I'm a big fan that the kids contribute without expecting anything in return. They're part of the family home. They contribute to the meal, the chores, cleaning up. I mean, my mum used to say that she didn't have a dishwasher because she had three of them. She didn't have an electronic one. She had the three kids. You know, one washed up, one cleared, washed up and put away, or whatever it was. So contribution is contributing with maybe not expecting anything in return. And I think, I think actually looking at those two words, contribution and participation, are similar and interrelated. So participation is a part of belonging. It's a sense of belonging, isn't it? Belonging to a family unit. And look how we bring that in through our kids' girlfriends or friends. So if they've got their mates around, we rally them in as well. We mentor and coach them like they're our own kids. Actually, we do the same with our employees. We've had the privilege of employing more than 500 youth over the last 30 years. And we teach them the lessons that they don't teach in school, or that the parents haven't taught them because maybe they don't have those skills. And we just generously give everything that would help them in their future. Just changing a tire, just teach the kids stuff. So participation raises self-worth, and self-image because they have a sense of belonging. If you participate, don't let them stay out on the sidelines. Bring them in. So does that sort of answer that question? They sort of are different, but they are intertwined, I think.
Yeah, certainly. And it brings it back even to connect and communicate, because that, at the end of the day, they are all interweaved. And I think that participation really builds up the bond between everyone that's involved. And that's a very, very good thing. So the next one is boundaries. And I think there's a bit of an issue with parents who aren't perhaps willing to parent when they should be. It doesn't even need to be like tough parenting or anything. It's just having some boundaries, having some expectations, because I can tell you I was raised really quite permissively. And I think I would have benefited from a little bit more boundaries and a little bit more expectations and a little bit more, you can call it strictness and toughness, but I think it's more just, being a parent. What do you have to say about that, Ali?
Well, the first one that came to mind, because you gave two contrasting scenarios there. So it is about that balance, and you need to step in when it's needed. So like boundaries are there to protect our children. So I believe in both. I believe in the freedom of choice for them to study and choose a career and a profession and a trade or whatever it is for them. That's their choice. Like sometimes that is forced upon them. They're encouraged to follow a pathway that may not be for them. So I definitely believe in choice and freedom, and to learn what they want to learn, and guitar and music and arts and crafts and sport and all, whatever life has got to offer, which is just beautiful. There's so much out there. So that way I like that freedom of choice to listen to their heart and follow their true passion and that sort of thing. And they may take time to discover this. They will. Some of them know it straight away, but others don't. So, but then you need to be a little bit strict and rally them in when it's needed to keep them safe and to protect them from what's out there. So I was, and my mum was a little bit like that with me, and I felt like it worked. So often we go to look at our parents, how were we raised, what we liked about how we were raised. So we want to do that with our kids. And then sometimes we'll go, I didn't like the way Dad was so heavy, strict on me, and I'm going to be a little bit more relaxed in that area, whatever it might be. But it's always good to use stories to relate. So I'm hoping parents can just know that it's a balance. And I'm part of a parent group, and a lot of the frustrations that I hear from the parents, sometimes single mums have challenging times setting boundaries and bringing their kids in when needed, because these teenage years, they're very tough years. So we've got power of the mind. So these young kids have got powerful beliefs, and if they want to do something, they just want to do it, and they'll huff and puff, and they can give the parents grief. So getting back to early, for those parents who are listening, who've got younger children, that respect and that communication, that mutual respect, it comes from an early age. So if my kids were going to do something that I didn't approve of, I would just do everything in my power to communicate the message that I needed to communicate to them. Hey, I'm not happy with you going out to a party on the beach because you're only 15 and I can't control the environment there. I don't mind you going to your friend's place. So I always give them that contrast, because I know there's parents there. I know who's going to be there. They call them gatherings. But a party on the beach on a Saturday night in a public place, that was outside my comfort zone as a parent. So the parents have got to explain and take the time to say, hey, I love you. I can't replace you. There's only one of you. I've said things like that. I care about you. Hey, you drive carefully. And I always use the right languaging. So I'm very conscious of languaging. So it's drive carefully, stay safe, look after each other. See how there's a positive connotation there? So this is all part of the communication. And when you are not coming down on your kids, cracking down on your kids all the time, they're more open to listen to you longer. You've heard me talk about the 15-second rule?
Yeah, so you don't waffle on.
Yeah, which I have a tendency to do. So if you're talking to kids, teenage boys, they've got a very short concentration span. You're open with a positive. Hey, I'm really excited you're going out this Saturday night. And you need to tell them what you do, your message as a parent, those boundaries to protect. Hey, look after each other, watch out for each other. Hey, getting home, what time are you coming home? Little nitty gritty stuff that you need to say. And then you close. Have a great time. You look great. You look gorgeous. This is part of it. And I'm hoping that the parents are really grasping this languaging and communication, because our kids are not our friends. You've heard me say this before. The parents are the parents, the children are the children. The parents' role is to protect them, set boundaries to keep them safe. And as they grow older and older, when they're out in the big wide world on their own, they have been empowered to make choices that will be right for them. I've talked about drugs and things like that for my kids from a very young age. And that's what my mum did for me. So yeah, just, not too young, but, just work it out, share the conversations, yeah.
Ali, feel free to say that this is maybe a bit too business oriented, but from developing your child's financial and vocational traits, do you think there's a place for parents to sit down with their teenager at some point in their teenage years and say, what are your 3-month goals? What are your 6-month goals? What are your 12-month goals? What are you going to do to get there? And check in, whether that's weekly, fortnightly, monthly, and see where they're at and help them and advise them along that path. Maybe that's a little bit too manager employee. Maybe that's perfectly fine. It's just an idea that just came to me. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that is an absolutely awesome idea. And that's what my children have done, goal setting. And I believe it's a trait of the financially savvy mums and dads, and a trait of the financially successful is that they think long term. So that's called vision. And I know from my experience, because I'm so privileged to be my age now. And as Steve Jobs says, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking back. Yep. So I know that looking back, what worked for me was my vision. And sometimes you can write your vision down. A short pencil's better than a long memory. But you visualize. So what you think about, you bring about. You are what you think about all day long. So vision, I believe it starts with a vision or a dream. So I definitely encourage this with parents. It's really letting our kids know that the world is full of opportunities. I want them to be optimistic, but also real, because it's both. It's optimistic and it's pessimistic, So yes, most definitely. So if I talk about my younger son, I don't know, I can't even remember whether I instigated it, whether he learned it at school or whether he learned it from the YouTube. He had short-term, medium-term, long-term goals. And he had a vision board. So 2 out of my 3 kids had vision boards, which basically is one way. So if you're talking young children, why not introduce a vision board, a dream board, a collage of pictures of what they want to achieve, what they want to see, what they want to visit, what they want to do, because the brain learns in pictures. And this is a cool story because, if I speak about one child at a time, my son Bailey was into film, photography. He had big, awesome red cameras on his vision board. He had his veggie gardens because he loves doing food. He visualized things. He cut out pictures. He put them on the vision board. He had Travis Rice, the #1 freestyle snowboarder in the world. He had him on the vision board because he was attached to the films that he used to watch and stuff. And places he wanted to see, Rome, what have you. I don't want to go on and on about it. But in a vision board, you could actually get these kids to do short-term, medium-term, long-term. They could almost divide it. I think this is a practical thing for kids. Getting back to Bailey, he did meet Travis Rice. He met him personally. He had time with him. He asked questions. He had a red camera on he carried one. He held it. If anyone looked this up, it's all on my Facebook pages. That became to fruition. His veggie gardens became massive. He met people on there. My daughter, Georgina, an actor, she had Nicole Kidman on her vision board. She met Nicole Kidman in person, one-on-one, engaged in a short conversation, had photos. That's just someone that she wanted to, meet in her life, and hopefully she gets a chance to meet her again. So they work. So goals, yes, most definitely. And for my husband and I, my husband is a visionary. He's got a massive vision, astronomical vision. And I would definitely encourage that, and just start small. And why not use the vision boards as something fun for the kids to do? So you'll see on my Facebook page, if anyone wants to go on my family wealth coach page, you'll see I've got photos of vision boards, and my clients, I encourage them to do them with their kids as well.
All right, I'll put a link to that in the notes.
It's a yes.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was just thinking, you should tie it in with the vision boards. But yeah, I was just wondering, is that a little bit too, you're treating your kid like an employee or making it a bit businessy? But I think if the tone is a parent helping and facilitating their child learn and grow, then that's perfectly fine. So, Ali,
Yes.
on the empowerment versus entitlement side of things, any key takeaways from today's session that you really want parents to put into practice with their teens?
Yeah, I just ask my question this all the time. What can I tell them? What can I tell everyone, just in a nutshell, how to raise financially independent kids? It's like, share the vision, have the dream, starts with a dream, and set these goals that we just chatted about. And they have the self-belief, because the world's full of opportunities. If the most successful person in your child's life, whether into sport, music, entertainment, arts, whatever it is for them, just get to choose someone. And that's what it was for Georgie, by the way. It was Nicole Kidman. And I used to say to Georgie, look inside Nicole Kidman. She can do it, you can do it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you want them to dream big. And then you've got to create that optimism. It has to happen. They have to have an optimistic vision of the future. I reckon that's number one. And number two is start it early as you can. And it's never too late. So the parents are raising their kids right now. There are no mistakes. Your kids have learnt lots from you, their parents. So, I'm not your kids' parents. I'm just throwing ideas around. So please get the kids to value them, to get them to contribute and to participate from an early age, as early as you can, because it's going to be easier later because of the whole new dog thing, So because when your teenagers are older, it might be harder to get them out, from the couch and off their devices. So just start it early, encourage them. So love and appreciate them for who they are, and they'll become who you love. So just remember with the communication, be mindful of the languaging, because they will be more open to listen to you when you are engaging in a conversation that's not too hardcore. You know what it's, and this is the other thing I didn't bring up. Just reflect back to when you were a teenager. Did you want to be yelled at by your kids or told what to do all the time, and you're not good enough, or you haven't done that? So just remember that balance. Tell them what they're doing well, they're learning and growing, and then give them some nitty-gritty stuff. You have got to keep them safe, set boundaries to protect them, and then always just close with love. That lovely, take care, you look great, have fun, see you when you get home. I hope that helps.
Lots of key takeaways there. I really like the start early one, not just because it is easy to start early, but because the benefits compound. And so if you start early, then it's just a huge head start over those who get started a bit later on. I think my key takeaway was the laundry list of ways that teens can help out around the home that you rattled off early on. And I'll make sure that I list each of those as dot points in the description so that they're really accessible to anyone who wants to have a think about maybe not necessarily implementing those, but other ones that are along those lines with their own teenagers. Well, thanks for watching. Bye for now. Have a good one. We'll see you again next time.
Thanks, Brad. Bye for now.